Hey there! So, welcome again to the Lost Beat 6 show. This is Steve, Punish Steve, Stephen Kohler, whatever you want to call me. I'm your host. This is the show, and I am super excited to talk to you today because we're going to start something freaky and funky and fresh. It's called Making the Scene. As you know, this is sort of a loose podcast thing, but most of the time what we're doing is we're talking to interesting people that have carved out their own space in their own creative mediums. And what they ended up doing was kind of coming up with some cool stuff. So we've been talking to certain guests here as well as the show goes on, but we're going to start a giant sort of segment or mini-series, if you will, of shows, and they're going to be called, like I just said it, Making the Scene, which will highlight different communities, both past and present. We're going to start it off on a more regional, local level, and these are people I've come to know a little more personally through my own journey as a whatever I am. So we're going to kick it off with the Los Angeles art rock filmmaking troupe called PLaNETS, and that's planets in all caps. Sometimes they're in spaces, no pun intended, and sometimes they have a small a in the name. That's if you want to look it up, that's how it's spelled. So in case you're wondering, and you're sitting in your home or in your car or you're doing the dishes and you're going, who the hell are planets? Because it's a sort of a regional LA thing, and it's this sort of thing. And if you're in not from here, it would be, you'd be like, I don't know, why would I care? And for the most part, you'd be right. But I think you should care, because this is really kind of how this might be one of the best examples of how to create a group of caring and really thoughtful artists in all sense of the word. There's a part of me that has a very kind of cynical edge, and rather often convinced that these romantic movements that happen throughout historical periods, and they're just never going to happen again. Up until about 4 years ago, I don't think I really saw any proof of that ever happening quite as harmoniously as it did, until I ran into these guys and ladies and just really wonderful people. So what I need you all to do, if you don't know, is I will have links in the show notes to the PLaNETS YouTube page and to the PLaNETS Bandcamp. And maybe I think they're on Spotify too. So they'll have links so you can kind of get an idea what these guys were doing and still are doing, because they haven't gone away. They just are able to be flexible enough to do what they want to do, which is like the ultimate goal, right? Before I move on to the guest, I want to make sure that we cover our tracks here with our own dealings here. So we want to make sure that you please, at this point, be sure to check out lostbeat6.com to see all the stuff we're doing. That's usually kept up to date by yours truly. And we also have, our food blog, run by Ryan, and all our other shenanigans. So just check us out. Please, do what you need to do, like, subscribe to your heart's content. So, anyway, our first guest is Mr. Adam Stilwell, and this is all his fault. And he is essentially a filmmaker, a writer, a producer, a wonderful singer and frontman to the band known as PLaNETS. He's the first guy I really wanted to talk to kind of get an idea of what all this was about, and how everything was able to function what it seemed to be so efficiently and so effortlessly. I think effortless is what makes it I think is the real end goal. So he's basically sent out a list to me, and I've been reaching out, and I will be talking to a few more people. It may be, he sent quite a list, and those who I know who have I've reached out to already know who they are. And if you have any thoughts or comments or want to talk about this, please let me know, and we'll find a way to get your voice heard. Because this is really, I really want this to be kind of a love letter to a scene that I found myself kind of on the outside looking in a good way. It's not like these guys were doing their own thing and I was left out. No, it was more of a, I found these people very at a point in their lives that they were in a very harmonious state of making music and just having a good time in a town where I thought that would not be possible, like, ever, because I think Los Angeles tends to be a very white noise and cynical town to ever try to kind of form any creative movement. Certain places can do it really well, depending on which street in New York you're in, or San Francisco seems to do a good job sometimes. There's the classics, the Parises, but it's hard to pull off in a city kind of like Los Angeles, where it's so big. No one really, I'm never ever convinced anybody truly cares. But these people really cared about what they were doing, and only for themselves, and that's, or for each other rather. And I think that's really a really sort of beautiful. It's really a beautiful thing. And so this is my way of showing both appreciation and wanting to know more about how this all came about, because it sounds, every time I see any of their videos, it just comes off as this really magical experience. And everybody I've talked to so far really has confirmed that. So I'm really excited to show and share this series with you, and share these talks that I had as sort of raw and sort of raw as they are. So I'm not gonna talk any further. I think we're gonna talk to Adam, and I really hope you enjoy it, and I really hope you check everything these people are doing out, because it's really, really awesome stuff. Okay. And thanks for coming on, Adam.
Of course.
So most of the time I'd probably do some sort of interviewee thing. I'd like to keep this as probably as casual of a conversation as possible.
Love it.
And essentially we're going to be talking planets. So I should probably start off with this whole thing I have with a fascination of creative collectives in general. And this goes back to this is why I'm a huge, history, when I'm a history buff as well. So I'm reading all things like Renaissance, and I named Lost Beat 6 essentially after three creative collectives of the Lost generation, the Beat generation, and the Elephant Six guys in Athens. I started around 2015, and around 2016 I realized that this planets thing that I kind of found myself kind of on the outside of, but I knew people who were more on the inside. I knew I met the Zemed brothers in 2015, so that was kind of my key
doorway in.
That's the portal.
yes, the Zemeds were a doorway for many. When we came together, it kind of opened a lot of doors in both directions.
Yeah, and I think it was sort of a jaw-dropping moment of how not only everybody could sort of get together and organize themselves in a certain way that they'd all buy into it, and so uncynically just create this sort of show and scene. And it's so that sort of a how did this all go down? So essentially, I heard about a house in Alhambra, and I heard about I sort of knew about Father Time. I knew about certain these things, but not how this all came about.
Right.
So I suppose, how did this all come about?
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it, and a good, very, very good question. I will preface with saying everything I'm going to be talking about is going to be kind of, you know, I'm looking back, and I don't do that too often, and that's maybe why stuff happens when you just keep moving forward and forward and forward. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say where it starts. I would say PLaNETS in general was myself and Adam Cotton met up in Montana on a movie I was making. He wasn't even working on it. He just was there in this little town I'm from in Montana where we were shooting. And we started playing music, and we basically wrote an EP and recorded it. And you'd be interested in this with it's a funny little town I'm from. We were friends with one of Bruce Springsteen's original engineers, and he had a little studio there. And yeah, I'm sure Cotton thought that was pretty cool. And I was movies for a while and hadn't been in a band for a while. So I was, ripe and ready to kind of explode musically. And we really did. And yeah, it just was the beginning of a love affair between me and him, making stuff together and creating music. And we were up there making the film and always planned to come back to LA. And then he was just like, well, he was fresh out of college. He grabbed his guitars and was like, well, let's go down. So he came down, and it really, for a while there, was just kind of me and him. And I remember a specific moment sitting on the porch of said band house in Alhambra. And it was just me and him living there. And we'd started building a little studio, and we, had done the whole striking out in LA, coming down with, in our cars packed full of gear, like we're gonna play music and take on LA, like classic story. And get here and play a couple shows to nobody, and it's all good. But we always wanted to. I think when we sat down on the porch there, it was funny. We sat down and kind of wrote down just I don't know what he called it something. He'll if he remembers this moment, but just kind of we laid down all the things we kind of wanted to do, and most of it was just ultimately it wasn't create music and become a big famous band or anything like that. It was to build a community, it was to have more people and just be able to create more things. And we sat there, and step one was, I remember at the top of our list was getting our robot. And our robot, our robot was our buddy Nathaniel, who's kind of the third piece to the beginning of the puzzle. And he was up in Montana, and reason I say robot is because we're a weird band, and we just from the start we're always very creative and wanting to make a 3D, 4D, 5D show. And not only was there music, but there was a dancing robot, and then people loved that. And so we needed him down there because we had all these creative ideas to tell stories with songs and stuff like that. And we got him down, and then we started playing shows at speakeasies, really late nights. Our drummer at the time was he lived in a after hours in LA called the Landing Party that would basically have us getting phone calls at midnight and going, you want to play a show at 3 a.m? And and us going, well, they did just come out with this thing called Four Loko, so we can down one of those and go to town all night. And
nice.
Lots of epic nights with people that wanted to stay up and howl at the moon, and that's kind of who we were. And we didn't know any of them, but we slowly started connecting with some people. And then I think the nature of it all really expanded when we decided, rather than just doing rock show or playing like a band, we wanted to put on a show. We wanted to expand on what's possible, maybe for a just show you're going to go see. And I think at the time, and I feel a little bad because at the time we made the folded arms Silver Lake scene kind of our enemy, and we were freaks at the time, we were creative and everything, and we liked all the things that the so-called hipsters liked.
Yeah.
And I can put a time on it. This is around like 2009, in that tone. And the Silver Lake scene was happening, but we weren't allowed in there yet, like we were the weird band. We'd fight tooth and nail to get anything near there, and we'd take our weird creatures out into the streets that were, characters in our show, and like even, try to pass around flyers and stuff, and we just get the weirdest looks, but it was kind of like a fuck you, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, it became more of the norm, I guess, later. But at the time, it was pretty weird. And yeah, I mean, a big moment. What I was getting at is that one of my girlfriend at the time, Natasha, was a dancer, and she was kind of out of Cal State LA.
Okay.
College, and she had a recital or something, and it was to one of my favorite pieces of music, the Fountain soundtrack or score by Clint Mansell, and she was doing one of the pieces from that, and it got canceled, and we had a show that night at the landing party at 3 a.m. So I said, well, why don't you take that piece and me and Cotton love the Fountain, that score. Let's learn it and let's play it as a band, and you do your dance then. And it was a massive moment where,
nice.
I obviously myself I'm a horror filmmaker. So I'm constantly trying to tell stories in a way. So I already had that going, and so we put all that together, and, that's how the band kind of got going. But honestly, the scene and what we ended up having with everyone was, I don't know. I think it was much less about music and everything, and more about personality, and more about, finding each other, like I think what we ultimately did, and what I'm getting at with all the little things I just described, is I think what we were doing is trying to either build a bridge between the stage and the people in the watching, the audience.
Right.
And what was interesting is the creative collective that you're speaking of, that was very intentional on our part. Our kind of mantra was, this is a band where if you want to come and be creative, we'll figure out a place for you. Number one. And number two, it's an open door policy. You're not in the band, you're locked in, and then you quit. You just, if you want to be here, you can be here. And if you don't, you don't have to. And so people who, wanted to create costumes would come in and do that for a while. People who wanted to dance, people who wanted to create shadow puppets and tell stories, and in that way. And it was my kind of job to kind of catch those people and figure out the place and expand the world. And Cotton, luckily I had him with his eye on the music the whole time, making sure the musicians were taken care of and that right. was moving forward. So as a band, I guess that's the foundation of that part of the story. And then the next part is, yes, connecting with the audience. And why I brought that up is I feel like a lot of it, when it became at its best, became, kind of a scene, which I don't think we even realized at the time that it was just all of our friends, but it's just that we got more and more friends, and we got more and more people in the band, because there'd be somebody in the audience who played the cello, and then she was up playing the cello with us during songs, and so I guess building a bridge between the stage and the audience, or what we did was kind of blow it up and explode it, so there was nothing in between the stage and the audience on a nightly occasion.
I'll tell you a little bit something about myself. My very first, and probably one of my favorite records of all time is the Peter Gabriel live, Secret World live album and subsequent film.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the first kind of, and of course he's another one of those guys who put the theatrics of a rock show in put it to new dimensions and whatnot. And that's always something I thought about when I was watching the Troubadour show.
That's awesome. Yeah, one of the first write-ups we got, which was very very cool, was one of our first LA Weekly write-ups. They mentioned Peter Gabriel and Iggy Pop, kind of a mashup. That's what they were. Yeah. Was that something? And I kind of get we have a small little rule on this pod where we are not allowed to ask what your influences were. I love it.
But being that said, like this is a little different where these was that something you were consciously thinking of?
No.
Or was that something that just kind of naturally progressed?
Not at all. To be honest, when I'd get asked about planets and where it comes from or what we sound like, my brain cannot go more blank. I honestly feel like it's why I think the community could happen, is that I was more inspired by, number one, like storylines that we could come up with that were, we had so many friends that were involved that I was more inspired by them.
Okay.
I think, but that being said, the inspiration would be so broad, but it would be more based in films. It would be based in everything. I think that this was like the reason that it became such a fertile ground for creativity, and it is that I think Cotton and I, at least, were coming at it with everything creative we'd ever been inspired by, like,
yeah.
So I honestly I didn't even know about the Peter Gabriel thing at the time. And that was why it was exciting when it was written up. I was like, ooh, cool. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah. What did you check out? Just personally, kind of curious.
Peter Gabriel.
Yeah. If you went back to look at it,
exactly what you just said. And it was a Slipperman stuff.
Oh
yeah, that was the main stuff. And to be honest, man, it was so long ago. And like I said, when that kind of went down, we were watching so much stuff. We were just all in it. I will say this. Ultimately, I went to probably the biggest, other than like films like Legend and things like that from my childhood and inspiration on stuff, was I went to Coachella one year and saw Fever Ray and her first album, and it, oh my God, it just floored me, and I wanted everything of it. And I think what it was too is personally, I was going from being in my early 20s to mid 20s to late 20s, and I embraced my dark side and the dark part of telling stories and playing music, and realizing the power in that, and we always said, and Father Time came up, I'm pretty sure with this one, we take from the darkness and give to the light, and that was kind of our thing. We wanted to. For me, it gave me permission to go into the darkest of places and explore them, because I had somewhere to put what I found. And I also had an extremely powerful, amazing group of creative folks to share it with, so I wouldn't be alone with it, which is a pretty heavy burden,
Yeah.
So
for me, that's mind-boggling, because I have a hard time getting my friends just to organize. This is 3 or 4 people, or even like a small group, just to get online together.
Yeah,
Yeah. how and with especially with an open door policy too, if it's just like if you're into it right now, or if you're not available, no worries, sort of thing.
Yeah.
How are you able to organize all of that? Was that sort of just the house being the way?
I will say a sense of place is one of the main keys. Again, I'm saying this all in hindsight, and I by no means have the answer to how you build a scene or a creative collective, but I think, me personally, I was built for it. I'd spend my whole life finding a place. I'm the kid that, what's funny is I'm an only child. But like even in my early 20s, when I first got apartments and first turned 21 and started throwing parties, like my house was an important place. And I always wanted it to be a place for people to come together, to be creative, to party, and I think that the party is important. And I think something
speak my language.
Yeah, exactly.
Feeling me.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's overlooked. And it's funny. I was just recently asked by a friend who's having a tough time doing the same thing, getting folks together to do something. I think the times where I was not at my best, even during then and now, is when I lose the idea of fun. That it sounds silly because obviously, to be a grown-up, we want to work hard, and it takes work to do all this stuff. But when you lose the fun aspect, but also the fun can go too far as well, as
sure.
in The Last Waltz, we started to have fun, and I could personally, especially in my 20s and early 30s, be, accused of letting the fun take over too much.
Sure.
Finding balance is important, but yeah, in every aspect, even if it's sitting down to get into the nitty gritty of the sound and the dorkiest, geekiest parts of what you're creating, to remember that you're having fun is big. And then you're right, a sense of place, a house, a place to be. That's the thing for us. And I think that's why the band house became such a important place, not only for us, but for our kind of community that we built to come together. Was at first we were outcasts. Like we weren't feel welcome at the Satellite or Spaceland before that, and even Silver Lake Lounge at one point was a little like kind of tough. And we had this place where anybody could come and there would be no judgment. We'd jam out, we'd have fun, be creative, and so that's a thing. Like, and then ultimately once we broke down the doors and got in to the place, we had already had years of creating stuff and how, getting fans, which I hate to ever say that because it's really not true. It's just some people that support and friends and people that participate in a different way, that when we did get in those doors, we were already influencing what that place was going to be like, because of the power and it's like a worn in pair of jeans, Mm-hmm. So, but you hit it, nailed it, like a major important thing. And I think it's definitely something that helped fertilize whatever we were doing, was having a place where we could come together. Yeah.
Yeah. We have the in the Lost. I hate to say that we have like a group of, it's basically me and a couple of my friends essentially in Ventura, because we're all Ventura based.
Love it.
And we used to call it a beef session.
Yeah.
And it's basically, it's essentially you hang out and there's a bottle of vodka in Amsterdam, probably frozen, and everybody's just taking shots, and you sing a song to shoot. You play a song to sort of karaoke to while you're shooting it. You have a certain point in time.
I love it.
And it's great. And I had this idea of going, we should, we had a, and I maybe it's just me trying to force the issue. And I could say it's sort of working because we're doing this podcast, but it was sort of like this. We need to make something out of this. This needs to be something productive, in terms of like some sort of creative output. We put a band together called the Psychedelic Space Beef Band.
Love it.
To counterbalance the show, and we not to there's no way we're comparing this because we never played a freaking show in our lives. We just made a lot of recordings.
Yeah.
and no one knows who the fuck we are. So sort of the high concept. I'm also really into Wagnerian Kunstwerk. Are you familiar with that?
No, I don't think so.
When Wagner was composing his operas, right, and it's essentially kind of like the birth of the auteur in the 19th century. So you write an opera. Most of the time, you have a librettist who writes the score, writes the lyrics. Mm-hmm. You have the composer, and then you have like the director and the entire, works with the cast and the whole thing. So Wagner, when he wanted complete control of all his projects, and was and he was also into high concept stuff. Right. So he would end up so he called it Gesamtkunstwerk, which means all complete, all work, I think.
Right.
I'm not good at German, but so the idea was he built his own theater house, wrote the operas that went without saying, wrote the libretto, designed the costumes. He may have had people make the costumes, but he was and directed the whole thing.
Right.
So he was completely in, and it's always all that stuff with with the ring cycle is 4 hour or 16-hour operas, Lord of the Rings tier, mythology and all that. And that really kind of brings home a lot of the stuff. And I'm saying this kind of on the fly because I forgot about that. Thing.
No, you're making me think too. I mean, I want to also speak up. Say it's not like we were just trying to have fun and not create. Like here's the thing: we wanted to. I think it's so important to have, it's not important. To me, it was important and helped to have something like a band, a show, something to build towards and something to build on. I mean, it's not like Cotton and I were reading books. We were studying how to be better. Yeah. And, we cared an amazing amount and do care. Like that's always something, the product, it's almost like sometimes I almost feel bad. Sometimes it's like, am I weird for wanting to get these people together because I feel like we can create something cool? You know what I mean? It's like, I want it to be natural, weird. And I don't want to feel like I'm a manipulator or anything like that. But it honestly, I can't tell you how much we cared and how hard we all worked because it's an insane amount of work. I just bring out the fun aspect because that's something that once you get working so hard, I find even though if people were to look at, us from the outside, they'd be like, oh, Stilly's having a blast the whole time. We were working our asses off. We were killing ourselves. Like it was a lot, a lot. And honestly, like you said, what do we, you said this earlier, what you have a group together and you kind of get some creative ideas going and you go, what can I do with this? What can I make with this? I think that's something, that's something that I've done my whole life. So that's a part where I really help out in the situation of PLaNETS and stuff like that because the Triangle, you mentioned before we hopped on, you mentioned you just watched that, which was basically kind of, I almost call it PLaNETS' second album. Because we really did take on making a film together. Cotton doing the sound, the score, me kind of building the whole idea with other creative filmmaker friends and us being in it and creating this thing, this other type of experience.
You had to build a commune.
That was, but that was basically built out of, I went to Burning Man and I had Nathaniel had a bunch of friends from Missoula, Montana that had all gone to college together. They're all actors and storytellers themselves. And I went out to Burning Man with them and saw the creativity and the amazing energy and had maybe 2 or 3 of those folks say, what do we do with this? And it took a couple years of being friends with them and thinking, and then that idea clicked. Instead of going to Burning Man one year, let's go out into the middle of nowhere, Montana. Again, had a place. A friend had 500 square miles of untouched land in eastern Montana, and it was a a sandbox, a playground. And I've been doing that since I was 3 years old. So give me that and we can do something. So yeah, it is that little stoke that's in there sometimes of what can we do with this? You have all this energy, and it's, it could be a really big thing. It could be a really small thing, but it's really gratifying when you can, with other people, create something together. And then if other people are interested, then holy shit.
That's the cool part, is that's where it resonates. It seems like someone else is vibrating on the same wavelength you are, and that gives it a little bit of 100% resonates.
And that's it. And that's why I said at the beginning, like, that it's less about our scene. It was, God, I don't even know, at one point, 20 bands or whatever, give or take. And our band had 20 people in it on nights, and sometimes people from those other bands, and everybody was in the audience. And it's just about, it's totally that. It's coming together, vibrating on a similar level, being proud of your friends. Like, there's nothing like that. Like, there's nothing like seeing your friends. Like, I remember we played Troubadour early, and people saw us and thought, oh, wow, they're really doing it. And we worked hard to get that Troubadour show. It was like crazy, and sold it out and everything. And a lot of people we met at those shows, and then like our satellite residency and stuff, like for a whole month in October, met so many people, but we worked our asses off to get to that spot. And then you go and you see like our buddies, LA River Band, who musically are nothing like us. They're nothing like us. We always call them our the band next door. They're like the girl next door. They're like adorable. We love them so much. Musically, we're nothing alike. We love their music. We love them. Going and seeing them play the Troubadour and headline there, it was just like, wanted to cry the whole time. Our friends, the Mod Pods, who didn't even really play a show outside of their, they had a little creative art space where we went and played shows early with them and stuff. We had them play at Casey's with us for a while. Another big thing about sense of place, like had basically a monthly residency at Casey's for years, where we could, have our friends' bands come play. If our friends wanted to start a band, we'd say, try it out here. We'll all show up and support you. And and that's it. You see this, that if you can see the beginning sometimes too, you become such a fan. And Mod Pods, same way. They hadn't really played much shows, and got them a show there, and I got them a show at the Satellite, and they couldn't believe it. And I'm like, what? You're my favorite band in Los Angeles. And then I went and saw them. They opened for the Melvins at the Troubadour on my birthday, and I was just crying the whole time. And
that's awesome.
Like, that's the shit, man. That's why, I don't know. Cool.
So this past year, restreaming past shows. You did Couch LA with Joe, and
that was an online festival, and that's as important as the bands, that you have people like Joe who are putting on shows and making, radio shows happen, and bringing people together in, connecting us with bands that we wouldn't have met, because she's going out to shows all the time. People like Dubs, Derek William Scott, but we call him Dubs.
I love Dubs.
These people are legends, man. They are bands in themselves, and they're everybody, every piece. It's just so important to get to where I'm sitting here talking to you about a scene and a creative collective, it doesn't happen without people like that, who are just, they're not even getting paid for anything. They're not doing anything. Neither are the bands, by the way. Nobody's getting paid. And this is all just because we grew up, I think, throwing parties and stuff, and this is just us throwing big parties in LA with people. And that, we call, at times we call our fans coyotes, and sometimes we call them freaks with 2 E's, but like, it's just, I think those ideas of be yourself, come on out. And that's why, like, back to the LA River Band and us being completely different types of music, but we connected on a human level and love each other. And that's what it's all about. And then beyond that, humor is such a major thing,
Oh yeah.
Getting out and each other. It was interesting when the Satellite, they gave up their stage. And everybody was sad and stuff like that. And I get it. It's a place that means a lot to us, but man, it's less about that place. We'll find another place to laugh to.
Yeah.
We'll find
I have
cigarettes outside and go inside and see our buddies play.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that place specifically because of the way just they had some strange policy. This is stuff I've heard from different people. I won't name names.
Oh no, I hear you.
So it wasn't like
that's to me that's my philosophy on it is. I know an inside track too of that they were wanting to do that for years. Like this, just the owner, he wanted to make it a restaurant or whatever. And the music was always on the chopping block. That being said, a lot of these places, to me, like I said, the band's never got paid and we can go play anywhere, maybe after this, it's the opportunity to build from the ground up. Maybe somebody like Joe or somebody like Dubs, somebody can start a cool place or, find some money and we can create another space, which is all we did before we got into play in those places aney
Right. That was, that almost felt like your what was the right word? Man, I'm always doing this. I always keep forgetting what to say. Remember like Monty Python, the Holy Grail, when John Cleese is always trying to find the right word and Eric Idle's like, idiom, sir. That's it.
My first earthquake, I got hit in the head really hard, and I'm pretty sure to this day I forget words like what's a stamp. I'll hold a stamp. I'll be like, "What's this called?"
I think what the word I'm looking for is that was like your coming out party or your kind of
totally.
You made it, and especially like the Troubadour is a place is these are sort of legendary stages, and I don't know how all that works. I don't know if that was. I don't know if the promoters were a pay-to-play thing, which is obviously about that
one. That one wasn't pay-to-play. There was some other little contract thing or whatever, but they were cool as hell. Like
okay, good.
Troubadour was one of the coolest and one of the first that like were open arms to us and in the town, if you can believe it or not, before the satellite, before all that, and that's the thing. It takes with everything. It's who you know. And stuff like that. And then if you start making noise in this town, you start getting something, going, then those places will listen, and that, for better or for worse, but it is what it is, man. And some of them are cooler than others, but that's, to me, looking back on the year, and seeing places shut down and stuff like that, that's, I get it. We all feel our different ways about these places and have all these memories, but those aren't going anywhere. The people are, it's going to be exciting to get back to where we can hug each other and party again and, and go to shows again. But in the meantime, I think honestly, creatives, it's not too bad for us because we can still create and figure out ways to do stuff. It's honestly the people who go to the shows that I feel the toughest right now, because that's what they do. They love that, and that's where they and we need that. If nobody went to, I said that at the end of our satellite residency is like thank you guys for being here, because if you didn't care, then we'd just be in a garage jumping around. It's cool, which is great, but that's the difference. It's like those folks are the ones that make it so we can go into public and try to influence in whatever way we want to.
I kind of felt bad for some of the bands that followed you.
because of the paper, they couldn't stand
all the paper and
I mean, that was all, that was as much, whenever you do big things like that, like it's a blessing and a curse. Like the Echo never wanted anything to do with us. We were just too weird. And, and a lot of people, like some people just thought we were gimmicky and stuff like that. And I get it. I never took that as a bad thing. I was like,
sure.
And we are, but we're putting as much into the music as anything else. We're not a gimmick. We do gimmicky things, and but so does everybody who ever makes anything. And we're not doing
Right.
anything for a gimmick. We're doing everything for a reason. So it never felt bad, but that was, yeah. And true. It was hard for us to fit into a, to just, oh, let's get these guys. They'll just play in between these two great bands,
They have a built-in stand-up act. It'll be great.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah. Antagonistic stand-up act. We have an explosion of trash at the end of our show. These guys, let's just get them on tonight. They'll do good. They'll bring 20 extra people because they're all in the band.
Yeah, I just can imagine just the venue going, whoa.
Yeah, it was great. The reason we got to play the Satellite for, one of the reasons was we got to know Jen, who was booking at the time, and Molly, who was booking at the time. And I remember, actually it was Griffin who told me this. So we had our residency, which was amazing and probably the biggest moment for us, where we met more people because we were just playing week to week, and it was Halloween. So we just went nuts, and it was just a Halloween party every week, and it was great. But the next month was our buddies, the Diamond Light. It was their residency.
Oh yeah.
They killed.
I know those guys.
Yeah, of course. They're Griffin, and those guys are great. But Griffin, I think it was him who told me that during even into like their third week or something like that, they'd be playing and they'd hit a real hard low note, and a piece of our like confetti papers would fall out of the rafters. And it was like, that was the greatest. Like you want as a band or as a creative to leave an imprint, but if you can physically leave something in the place,
Yeah. I have some experience working with the Santa Barbara Stage Union, and that includes working like these. For a while, for the last couple of years, I was working at the Santa Barbara Bowl, and one of the first years I worked there, the Flaming Lips showed up.
Oh yeah,
and we had to haul in all these confetti machines and the carbon dioxide pumps and all these things, and it was just like, I think someone else did confetti at a different venue. Yeah, it's a different place. Anyway, the point was, it was just like some poor dude has to sweep all that up. And
yes, well, you just if you speak with Cotton, you'll know, like Flaming Lips definitely were. That was an influence.
Okay, yeah, very good.
That was for sure. Yeah, they were one of them, and I think Wayne and those guys, they get it, and I think we put together stuff with duct tape just like he does, and
they only had they only had 2 trucks.
Yeah.
That's sort of saying something on a touring end.
I do want to say this though. You mentioned who would be sweeping it up. We would always sweep our own shit up.
Okay. I trust you guys.
No. But that was part of it. Like that was the cool. To load the van, and Nathaniel was because he's a little shorter, he could get in the van, and like he was the guy putting all stuff in there. So hey, if we had a lot to remember, and the guitars would go in, and then the brooms go in right out, like it was, I remember, like, I've got a couple posts on my Instagram where it's like, I have a little briefcase and I'd pack in all my, my weird hand thing that looks like I ripped my hand off, my mask.
Is that the red scarf thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mask, all these things, and it was like and I'd take a picture and I'd say my instruments for tonight. Like we just looked at it all in the same kind of lens of that. The guitars and the the special effects are all our instruments.
So I haven't really started talking about the mythology that you guys were building.
Sure,
but I'm trying not to too much, just because I think part of the in my interpretation of what I've been seeing, it seems like there's a lot of different. It's sort of a primal pick and choose your horror,
Yep. No, totally.
Which, between the actual creatures, the robot, and I'm not sure what are the large
witch ghosts?
Witch ghost. Okay.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out what are the things that I don't know how to call them? What
Lord
are they
Talons.
Yeah. We had witch ghosts. We had coyotes. We had faceless men. We had the third eye, which is the eyeball man.
Oh yeah.
The zombie. We had all kinds of them.
And I was told Dark City is a follow-up. Now, as of this, I watched it, but I didn't watch it as under. I kind of watched it with different perspective than I am now.
Yeah.
It was the sort of a follow-up to The Dark Woods.
Yes.
And that was more of a post-Los Angeles move, right? That sort of, you've been in the city long enough to kind of get the vibe of Los Angeles. And like I'm born and raised in Ventura County, so I never lived in LA.
Right.
Up for 4 years in college, but you know, I never had this sort of golly gee, I want to get into the city and make it sort of.
Yep, I got you.
You know, and that's something I don't like. So I never had that sort of Midwest to coastal experience of kind of adapting. So what is there any sort of changes, or is there more characters involved? What is there anything that changed between woods and city?
Yeah, I could give you a quick, like, kind of a little overview. Obviously our first album was called The Dark Woods, and basically and the show at the Troubadour, the second show we did when is the most known, when people started kind of knowing us, was called The Troubadour Abduction. And so you know, it starts out us exploring the woods, I mean, that's where I'm from personally. And I know Cotton is fascinated with the woods. He's from Austin. But he says the Dark Woods was him making friends with the fear of the woods. And for me, it was me making sense of the woods, which is where I'm from. So it was a big one for both of us. And then the Dark City, and I think I'm speaking mostly musically here. And then the Dark City was going to be kind of both of us making friends with the city. That being said, and that's mostly about like the sounds of the music, which the Dark City album, we have not, we had a bunch of great demos, and we'll see, we may finish that album at some point. But the story, so back to the Dark City Abduction, I could go into detail, but it is mostly for people to see and kind of think for themselves. But the overarching idea is that we find you can find beauty in the forest or in these unknown places and find magic. And sometimes if it's found by the wrong folks, it can be abducted. Maybe not the wrong folks, or maybe it's just found. It can be taken, which abduction can be taken to another place and to the city. And I think it's at the end of the day, you always go super personal. And for me personally, it was me, you know, those characters that we're talking about that we found in the Dark Woods, which was years of playing that show and writing songs that were little mini stories. The abduction, the show at the Troubadour was an attempt to tell a succinct kind of theatrical story, whereas before then it'd always been little stories for each song in a way, but we'd always work in trying to come with a theme. But that was it coming all together, and basically the theme of that one ends as kind of like the end of Empire Strikes Back in Star Wars, where the bad guys take in chains all of these you know, magical characters, these quote unquote freaks of the forest that were just fine on their own before anybody came. And then, you know, when found, it's kind of this my character is kind of this tragic character that finds them and becomes, you know, part of them, but his people come back for him and then find all this magic and take it to the city. And the show we did in the Dark City, which the show that's online, ended up
Lounge, right?
Yeah, is at the Silver Lake Lounge, and we unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, we did it at the Silver Lake Lounge, and that night we played with the Diamond Light and the Mod Pods and a band I think after us called Akiini. and we fucking packed the place. It was crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it was the most packed and the hottest night ever. And it was to the point where you'd go and the lounge kind of filters out onto the sidewalk there, and then there's sunset going by the street, and the crowd went right out the door and kept going and was like on the sidewalk. And so we need a little space. That's why the Troubadour is such a great spot for us. It's a nice big stage. Yeah, so we didn't, if you see the video, we didn't necessarily get to portray it in that sort of way, but it was kind of perfect for the show because it's a more punky show. And like I said, we always tried to explode, even us being theatrical, the Troubadour is like this place where actually we are a little disconnected from our audience and have to put on a show. You're forced to a little bit on that big stage. And then the Silver Lake Lounge is more you're all there. You're almost, there's not really a stage up high. It's like you're all just kind of there, which is beautiful for the show because we only had
more acid test.
Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. And we only had a month to come up with that show, whereas we had years for the abduction. So the idea, though, story-wise, for the Dark City, the one at the Silver Lake Lounge, was the Dark City Museum, and the idea that these freaks, these magical characters, are taken to the city, and now they're put in a museum, and dealing with that. And I think that's also why I say personally, for me, I don't know, I don't want to put too much on it, but probably dealing a little with like, okay, now people are looking at me. Or now I'm in a city and I'm not just this thing in my room or out in the woods where nobody can see me, where I'm just untouched and like a fresh being. This is now I'm being manipulated a little bit, and I'm having to think about this a little more, and I don't know. I feel like that may be in there why it was a natural build, because we have 3 or 4 more other album and story ideas, and like it's going to go all the way to space, and we have a dream world that we did years before.
That's how my concept record ends.
There you go.
It's called, it ends with beefers in space.
There it is.
Which I'll fill you in on not the listener's time, but eventually it's part of the whole thing. But I'll fill you in after this.
I love it. But, we got to go to space, you got, especially doing psychedelic stuff, you got to get up there. But anyway, so without getting too into it, there's a broad story there that, kind of, it's fun. It's all these little things that keep it chugging along, and the songs can be extremely personal, but then it's fun to be able to take it out and plug in a little bit of story here and there, like a soundtrack score.
Yeah, thinking of it now, and I don't think it's closed down, which is a good news. It always seems like one of my favorite places in that whole Silver Lake. It's not really East LA, but eastern part. Yeah, Did you ever play any bootleg shows?
Oh yeah, no, we played the bootleg. Okay. Yep, we did. We actually played with the Janks.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, I don't know. It was late. It was 2000, I believe. Yeah, I don't even remember when, but
the last thing they did was like 15.
Yeah, it was in that zone. It was in there, and yeah, we had a great show. That one was a little bit of a challenge for us because the stage is so high up, and it feels like a smaller place. So it was but yeah, it was a blast. It
seems that because that place always kind of reminds me of like I would know, like a Warhol factory.
Yeah,
it's got the film reels going on in another room. You got the outside. There's a vending, some weird,
Yeah.
And the main showroom you can play, and that's I feel that if that thing, if thematically, if you were able to take the whole space, you could do something really cool with it.
Yeah, I feel we would have had to. We didn't really ingratiate ourselves to the place yet. That our show, it was kind of like the Jenks show, so it was like,
was it their residency, right?
I don't know if they were residents, but I think it was just us doing one big show. And I mean,
okay,
for us, usually with a place, we would, especially if it wasn't our show, we try to turn it down just a little, like this isn't our show. We're going to do our crazy stage stuff, but like to turn the space into ours, it had to be our show. So I think if we would have played a couple more times there, that would have been a very interesting trip. Although I think, the stage was just a weird, it was weird. I think it was a weird one for us for some weird reason, but maybe for me, maybe not for anybody else.
How did the theme nights come about?
Theme nights as in
like this is sort of post, and I want to say post plans because I know it's very it is what it needs to be, but like there was a Dark Side of the Moon night, there was all the Father Time Christmas parties. The last one I went to I think was 2017's Summer of Love thing, which I thought was freaking cool because you guys had some really the group itself it's a collective of Bert and Emily and the LA River Bend, all those people. They were playing like sort of deeper cuts of the psychedelics. It was like, okay, they researched this. It
was 1967. So it was 2017. So we were celebrating the 1967 Summer of Love. So
right.
I mean, that's a direct result of exactly what we've been talking about this whole time. It's a great time to bring that up because that's what it was. It was the scene. It was everybody. Now we're friends and we didn't care if you're in Mars and the Massacre and you're in Crazy Brave. We were like all playing together anyway. And it was like, well, let's take on it. I mean, it definitely, I'm pretty sure we started doing things like having guests up, like, somebody from this band would come up and play with this band. And, people were like, oh, super groups and stuff. Even just when they're seeing, it's not like it's a super group, but it's like, but friends playing with each other, but you love this band. And then you see these two playing together. It's fun, but it's all we were doing anyway. And we did have the band house still. So,
because for that to work, you have to prep for that.
It's a
lot of prep work. Everybody has to be on the right schedules. And like, that's the thing. Like, I'm always like, wow, they did that.
It was a nightmare. It was a fucking nightmare, man. So it was not easy to do, but like everybody was always so dedicated, and I call it being game. Like you're just game for it. And I think one of the first big ones, and we were inspired by the scene itself. Like I think that Mars and the Massacre at one point did Echoes. They did the song Echoes at their residency at Silver Lake Lounge. And who knows? But years later, we're sitting there going, well, it's Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Like, I don't remember what it was, what anniversary it was of the year, but we're like, well, that's a good excuse to do that album. So that, and we had the band house and it was like, let's go. Like, and honestly, it's between the band house and Casey's. Casey's, we'd do shows. We'd start doing, we were calling them holiday rambles. Because I don't know if anybody knows this, but pretty much after every show PLaNETS did, for better or for worse, we'd get home and we'd watch The Last Waltz and just kind of wind down every show. Like that's what we did. We come home and there's this one part where Levon, he's talking and he's talking about shows and stuff. And he's like, yeah. And then, we'd be playing and then we get to what we called the I forget exactly, the late night ramble. And that's when the kids would go to bed and the songs would get a little juicier. Everybody would start dancing a little dirtier, So we kind of took that idea and started doing the holiday rambles, which pretty much at the beginning were just big shit shows of us trying to get all of our friends on stage to, do a song or two or three here. And then at the end, do just one big version of, Denny's whatever song and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it started there and you get confidence playing with each other. And then rather than wanting to, hang out at home and have a couple beers watching something, or you could invite your buddies over and start playing Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, are we living in heaven or what? So that was pretty easy, and just from there, we get ideas, and I think it was my job to lock in and see if we could how many people we could have involved and turn this into, without it being a planetsy thing, that sort of vibe where maybe there's a song here where we do something extracurricular or this or that, where it just feels like a show. And luckily we had all the built-in fans and friends and everything to support us and make us feel like all the work was worth it. Even though if there was nobody there, it still would have felt worth it playing an album like that, or going and celebrating the Summer of Love, for God's sakes, which is, just so fun to dive into all that stuff with your friends and to look across the room at the beginning of Tom Petty doc, the Running Down a Dream, Peter Bogdanovich made, which is beautiful.
Is it the 4-hour one?
Yeah, it's a big long doc, but it's beautiful. Yeah. And right at the beginning, I'll never forget this, and it feels like it every time. Tom Petty describes it the best way possible, and it's super simple. He's like, it was when he first got a guitar, he first got his buddies together, and they started playing a song, and he just looked it around and was like, we're doing it, like that is it. You get that, like my hairs are going up on my arms right now. Like that is a drug, man. That is a a thing to live by, when you can look around and see the people that you love and you're doing it, like creating something, anyway. But
I think I don't have too much left. I think cool. I'm going to throw a question your way that I'm going to butcher this because it's not my idea. Is if there's anywhere in the world in this like an untapped thing you haven't. I'm gonna throw filmmaking into this too, because that's kind of that's your background. Anything you haven't sort of covered and want to, and we've been asking like musicians this, like anywhere in the world you'd like to record or like kind of tap it, like some sort of culture you would want to tap into.
Oh boy. I mean, we've been talking about place a lot, and I have a direct answer for, I don't know if this is the question you asked, but you kind of did.
Take it.
you said a place that you'd want to record or something like that. And I know, like, I haven't even talked to Cotton about this yet, but like, if we were ever to, I mean, Cotton and I's, one of our first things we did is watch Pink Floyd live at Pompeii. And nice. That is, if there's ever a bond to make musically with somebody, that is a good place to be. If you guys both, if you jam on something like that together. And so and Cotton's a bit, he loves nature. He's a adventurer, just like I am. I took a trip. I finished a movie a few months ago this summer, and I took a trip driving in my van. I know it's, the COVID times, but I have a van and I did it very safely. I took a trip and I took all the back roads up to Montana, and which is where I'm from. And then on my way back down, I wanted to go to the extraterrestrial highway. I've got a massive fascination with aliens, UFOs,
nice.
Abduction, and on my way down in Nevada, there was a sign for a massive crater, and I took the drive out there. It's like 10 miles on a dirt road, and it probably did in a couple of my tires that went out later on Area 51, my drive to Area 51, but it was worth it. I got out there, and there is the most massive fucking crater. It's huge. And I went out there and I looked at it and I was just like, this is the biggest hole I've ever seen. It's unbelievable. And it's an amphitheater, basically, right? Like, it just is a huge, but then I went and I was like, I'm going to scream into it. I'm going to yell, see what the echo is like. Dead, pure dead. There was I yelled and I felt odd. I felt like I was going to fall over. Like, it was alien to me. Like, there was literally in my life, I've never heard less echo or anything. So that would be.
Were you in the middle of it?
I know. This is at the top of it, man. Okay. I don't even know. I don't know how I would have gotten down in there. And I don't know what it ultimately is, but it is an incredible, like, place. And so like for if there was a thing that me and Cotton, based on Live at Pompeii is where a lot of this even came from, a night of us just watching that and maybe doing a little shrooms, but then but going to this that would be a pretty crazy place to do a big sonic show.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if that answered the question, but we're talking a lot, sense of place a lot in this
totally,
episode. So, that'd be a place.
Yeah, that I think that counts, and I think that works. I think here's my plan. What I'm going to do. I think when I'm gonna once we get off air, we'll talk. I want to do a little more talking about who else we want to have. I'd like to talk to about this. And then,
for sure.
And then probably have like if we can pull it off, and maybe if we're all Zencasting, that might be a plus.
Yeah.
Maybe have like a sort of a group finale thing once I kind of have everything and I'm gonna probably try to write some sort of essay on top of it, just for my own personal archive thing, because I'm trying to do written work on top of the label stuff I'm doing. So
that's amazing. We're all pretty savvy, so I think we could probably make that happen.
So I'm going to go ahead and we'll close this out. I want to say for the recording side, I want to thank you for coming on and help insight into this. Into this whole mess you made.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, brother. That's a great way to put it.